David always looked up to his father, Arthur. Arthur was a quiet man, a mechanic who built his life around the simple smell of motor oil and honest hard work. He had hands that were constantly calloused, but surprisingly gentle. For David, the small garage they owned in their Ohio hometown wasn't just a business. It was the place where he learned what it meant to be a good man. They spent countless evenings restoring classic cars, sharing stories under the warm glow of hanging work lights. Arthur taught David that every broken thing had value and could be fixed with enough patience. David admired his dad's unwavering dedication to their small community. Even when money was tight, Arthur would never turn away a neighbor in need of a quick repair. He was the anchor of David's entire world. As David grew up and started his own career in architectural design, he never forgot those garage lessons. He visited Arthur every Sunday, bringing coffee and sitting on the familiar overturned buckets. They would talk about everything from the changing weather to David's ambitious city dreams. Arthur was aging, his steps growing slower, but his proud smile whenever David walked through the garage doors remained as bright as ever. The world shifted abruptly during a harsh December morning. Arthur collapsed while organizing tools, the sound of falling wrenches echoing through the empty shop. David received the terrifying phone call while at his office, his heart dropping into his stomach. Rushing to the local hospital, he found his strong, resilient father looking incredibly small in a pale hospital bed. The diagnosis hit David like a freight train without warning. Arthur had a severe congenital heart defect that had somehow gone unnoticed for decades. The doctors explained that his heart was failing rapidly, and the only viable solution was a highly specialized experimental surgery. The procedure was incredibly risky and not covered by their standard medical insurance. David listened in stunned silence as the chief surgeon detailed the overwhelming financial cost, a number that seemed entirely impossible to reach. Without the surgery, Arthur had only a few months left. The weight of that timeline pressed heavily on David's chest, making it difficult to even breathe. Arthur, ever the stoic realist, smiled weakly and told David not to worry about an old mechanic. He said he had lived a good, full life and was ready for whatever came next. But David refused to accept defeat without a fight. David knew he had to save the man who had given him everything. He spent sleepless nights researching alternative treatments, medical grants, and specialist hospitals across the country. Every avenue seemed to lead to a frustrating dead end, surrounded by endless red tape. Time was slipping away through his fingers like dry sand. He needed a massive amount of money, and he needed it faster than seemed humanly possible. Desperation forced David to make agonizing choices about his own future. He immediately listed his beautiful downtown apartment for sale, trading his comfortable lifestyle for a tiny, rented studio. He sold his beloved car, the very first vehicle he and Arthur had ever restored together. Handing over the keys felt like tearing out a piece of his own soul, but he knew material things could not replace his father. Even after liquidating his assets, David was still drastically short of the required funds. He approached his architecture firm, presenting an incredibly ambitious, high-stakes design pitch that he had kept hidden. He offered to forfeit his annual salary in exchange for a massive, immediate bonus if the firm won the contract. His bosses warned him it was professional suicide if he failed, but David eagerly signed the contract anyway. For weeks, David worked around the clock, fueled by sheer adrenaline and cheap coffee. He slept under his office desk, waking up with aching muscles to refine blueprints and structural models. His friends worried about his declining health, watching him grow thinner and more exhausted by the day. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw his father's gentle smile, which gave him the strength to keep pushing. The day of the major pitch arrived, and David stood before a room of stern corporate investors. He poured every ounce of his passion, knowledge, and desperation into the presentation. He didn't just sell a building design, he sold a vision of community and endurance, inspired by his father's garage. When he finished, the room sat in complete silence. He walked out feeling entirely drained, unsure of his fate. 3 agonizing days later, the phone rang. David had won the contract. The massive bonus was wired directly into his account, finally giving him the exact amount needed for the surgery. He ran through the hospital corridors, tears streaming down his face, clutching the bank confirmation slip. He burst into Arthur's room, breathless and crying, telling his father that they were finally going to fix his broken heart. The morning of the surgery was tense and filled with silent prayers. David sat in the cold waiting room, staring at the ticking clock, feeling completely helpless. He remembered the countless hours he spent watching his dad patiently fix broken engines, hoping the surgeons had that same steady grace. Hours stretched into eternity, the silence only broken by the soft hum of the vending machine in the hallway corner. Finally, the lead surgeon emerged through the swinging doors, wearing a tired but genuine smile. The experimental procedure was a complete success, and Arthur's new heart was beating strong and steady. Relief washed over David in a powerful wave, bringing him to his knees in the hospital corridor. He had risked his entire career, his home, and his financial future, but he had successfully bought his father more time. A year later, David and Arthur stood side by side in the garage, restoring a new project. David had to start his career completely over, but he had never felt wealthier. He learned that true success isn't measured by bank accounts, prestigious jobs, or expensive properties. True wealth is found in the people we love, and the sacrifices we are bravely willing to make to keep them by our side.